Who almost played Haymitch instead of Woody Harrelson? Which famous musician tried and failed to get his songs played in Catching Fire? Keep watching to learn the untold truth about the Hunger Games movies. The Hunger Games series ended up grossing just under $3 billion worldwide, making it one of the biggest film franchises of the 2010s. It was an impressive feat, especially since the source material was still fresh in the public consciousness. It wasn't a saga getting by on decades of nostalgia, but rather one that resonated powerfully at the moment. As a result, the franchise had no trouble securing sizable box office returns every single time it hit the theaters. Given the series' enormous financial victories, it might be surprising to learn how little Lionsgate paid for the film rights. Back in 2008, Newsweek reported that the studio shelled out just $200,000 to bring Katniss Everdeen and her comrades to the big screen. While far from chump change, that seems like an impossibly low sum now given the franchise's success. The return on investment wound up being massive, with the eventual box office grosses far exceeding the price paid for the rights. Nowadays, it's nearly impossible to imagine anyone but Jennifer Lawrence playing the iconic lead role of Katniss Everdeen. The first Hunger Games film came out at a pivotal time in Lawrence's career. Her star was rising after her acclaimed turn in 2010's Winter's Bone and her debut as Mystique in 2011's X-Men First Class. Plus, The Hunger Games premiered just months ahead of Silver Linings Playbook. It might seem like Lawrence was fated to play Katniss, but her selection was far from a sure thing at the time. According to EW, the casting search for the role spanned far and wide, with at least 30 different women being considered for the part. Lawrence was a top contender from the beginning, but young stars like Haley Steinfeld, Saoirse Ronan, and future Divergent star Shailene Woodley were also in the running. The process considered performers ranging from ages 14 to 24, and since there was initially no frontrunner, it was open season for young actors. Eventually, Lawrence, hot off her Oscar nod for Winter's Bone, would score the role of Katniss, changing her career and the Hunger Games franchise forever.
Thank you for your consideration.
While not quite as extensive as the hunt for Katniss Everdeen, Lionsgate's search for a director to helm the first Hunger Games was still quite an affair. In September 2010, Deadline reported that the primary frontrunners for the job were Gary Ross, Sam Mendes, and David Slade. Francis Lawrence, who would go on to direct all of the Hunger Games sequels, was also considered for the first film, but he was ultimately passed over. It's easy to see why Lionsgate gravitated towards each of these filmmakers for the Hunger Games, even though they each had vastly different qualifications. Slade, for example, was hot off of helming the third Twilight movie, Eclipse, which had reached a box office high for the franchise. Meanwhile, Mendes didn't have experience directing movies aimed at teens, but his reputation as director of the Best Picture-winning film American Beauty would have lent instant prestige to the Hunger Games. Eventually, though, Lionsgate settled on Gary Ross, another director familiar with award season thanks to his 2003 sports drama Seabiscuit. With Ross at the helm, a key part of the Hunger Games equation was solved. The casting for Katniss, Peeta, and Gale took up much of the media's attention when it came to getting actors assembled for the Hunger Games, but they were far from the only characters in need of talented stars. One of the most important figures in the whole franchise is Haymitch Abernathy, a former Hunger Games victor who's a shell of his former self by the time he's assigned as a mentor to Katniss. The part required someone who could be funny while also providing a believable sense of sorrow and trauma. It's a complex part, but also one of the most important to the story. In April 2011, as The Hunger Games was nearing the start of principal photography, Vulture reported that John C. Reilly would be offered the role. A character actor known for working in all genres, Reilly seemed like a great fit. He could definitely handle the comic side of Haymitch, and his dramatic performances in films like Chicago demonstrated his ability to depict vulnerability as well. However, despite how promising the casting sounded, it wasn't to be. Woody Harrelson was ultimately selected for the part instead, and reprised the role in all 3 Hunger Games sequels.
Oh, Joy, why don't you join us?
Once The Hunger Games became a box office smash, it was immediately apparent that the other 2 books in the series, Catching Fire and Mockingjay, would be adapted into feature films as well. Even before the first movie's release, Lionsgate showed its confidence in the franchise by scheduling a Catching Fire adaptation for release in November 2013. It was a bold move that showed high expectations for The Hunger Games, and it also allowed for Catching Fire to come out just a year and a half later.
Now, because of her, they all pose a threat. Because of her, they all think they're invincible.
Just a few days into the theatrical run of The Hunger Games, director Gary Ross announced that he would not be directing Catching Fire. According to EW, Ross admitted that the sequel's rapid production schedule didn't give him adequate time to prepare the project, making him uneager to return. When Lionsgate quickly got to work finding a replacement director for Catching Fire, the competition was quickly narrowed down to two names: Bennett Miller and Francis Lawrence. At the time, Miller seemed like a solid pick, as he'd recently helmed award season favorites like Capote and Moneyball. Francis Lawrence, no relation to Jennifer, was a genre movie veteran known for films like Constantine and I Am Legend. Eventually, the odds tilted in favor of Lawrence, who ultimately won the gig and went on to direct both parts of the Mockingjay adaptation as well. Screenwriter Michael Arndt hit the ground running at the start of his career in Hollywood. His first produced script was Little Miss Sunshine, which would go on to win him an Academy Award. Right after that, Arndt penned the screenplay for Toy Story 3, making him 2 for 2 in critically acclaimed scripts. One of his many gigs after working on the Pixar film was rewriting the screenplay for The Hunger Games: Catching Fire, an experience that wound up being a major challenge to pull off. In an interview with the Script Lab, Arndt revealed that the primary issue he faced with rewriting Catching Fire was time. Every screenwriter wishes they had more time to write and edit their scripts, but Arndt had the specific challenge of finalizing it in just 12 weeks before filming began. With such limited time on his hands, Arndt needed all the help he could get. Fortunately, co-writer Simon Boyfoy and the rest of the Hunger Games creative team were there to provide exactly that. Through extensive collaboration, Arndt made sure that the screenplay for Catching Fire was ready to go just in time for the cameras to start rolling. Ed Sheeran is such a popular artist that it's hard to imagine anyone turning down the opportunity to work with him. He's had big success contributing songs to feature films like The Hobbit, The Desolation of Smaug, and Yesterday. However, Lionsgate actually passed on the chance to work with Sheeran on The Hunger Games: Catching Fire, rejecting a trio of tunes that he proposed for the film's soundtrack. In an interview with radio station Click 98.9, Sheeran said that he pitched 3 original songs for the Catching Fire soundtrack, all of which were turned down. Sheeran also noted that he had a similar experience having song proposals rejected for the Twilight movies. Despite the setbacks, he said that he still wanted to produce music for feature films as a way of expanding his creative horizons. Of course, given the enormous success that Sheeran's had in the years since Catching Fire, missing out on the film obviously wasn't the end of the world for the performer. Still, having so many original songs rejected would be a disappointment for anyone, even him. It's easy to see why the third Hunger Games book, Mockingjay, was split into 2 separate movies. Both the Harry Potter and Twilight series adaptations had their final installments split into 2 parts, and The Hobbit spawned an entire trilogy all on its own. It makes sense why The Hunger Games would follow suit. After all, turning one book into multiple movies means extra opportunities for the studio to milk a big-name IP at the box office.
If we burn, you burn with us!
However, the official reason given by director Francis Lawrence for splitting the Mockingjay book into multiple films was to emphasize 2 distinct tones in Katniss Everdeen's final adventure. Lawrence saw the first Mockingjay movie as being more internal, a quiet but ominous political affair, whereas the second film was a larger-scale war story. For Lawrence, trying to cram these different aesthetics into one film wouldn't have worked, so he welcomed the opportunity to split the story into 2 feature films. Of course, the fact that Lionsgate got an extra blockbuster out of this decision was a nice bonus for the studio as well. In February 2014, Hollywood lost an acting legend when Philip Seymour Hoffman passed away from a drug overdose at the age of 46. The actor left behind a staggering body of work, having earned 3 Oscar nominations and a win during his lifetime. Hoffman's death came toward the end of filming the 2 Mockingjay titles, in which he appeared as Game Maker and Rebel Commander Plutarch Heavensbee. Since Heavensbee was such an important part of the books and the Catching Fire movie, Hoffman's death had a major impact on production. In the end, only minor changes had to be made in the wake of Hoffman's passing. He had just 1 major scene left to film for the second part of Mockingjay, and all of his material for the first part had been completed. The big remaining scene was supposed to show Heavensbee meeting Katniss after her 3rd act imprisonment. Instead, the scene was changed so that Haymitch visited her and read a note that Heavensbee had written. It was a bittersweet moment for fans of the beloved actor, a clear reminder of Hoffman's absence and the tremendous loss that Hollywood had suffered. For a brief moment, the casting of The Hunger Games: Mockingjay Part 2 included Lily Rabe in the role of Commander Lime. Being a part of the blockbuster star-studded cast would have been a big deal for Rabe, but she eventually had to drop out of the production, with Gwendolyn Christie replacing her in the final cut. Such drastic casting shifts in productions as big as Mockingjay are sometimes due to behind-the-scenes drama, but according to Rabe, that wasn't the case for her. Speaking to Collider in 2021, Rabe explained that when she initially signed on to Mockingjay, she didn't have any scheduling conflicts. However, the shooting dates kept getting bumped up, eventually causing an interference with Rabe's Shakespeare in the Park production of Much Ado About Nothing. Since she had committed to the play first, Rabe had to drop out of Mockingjay. According to her, the producers of the film were very understanding and supported Rabe's choice when it became clear she'd have to pick one or the other. Though far from ideal circumstances, there are certainly worse ways to leave the cast of such a high-profile movie. Check out one of our newest videos right here. Plus, even more Looper videos about your favorite movies are coming soon. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and hit the bell so you don't miss a single one.